G'day, it's Yamahara here. If you're in or have been in a relationship with somebody with borderline personality disorder, for a lot of people who are exes now, more so even, or loved ones who are quite aware that someone in your life has borderline personality disorder and may be untreated, but even for those who suspect it in somebody not diagnosed, it's really important to realize that calling out their behavior, something that's quite compelling to do, because you want them to know, you want them to understand, and yet calling out their behavior isn't really going to help change anything. So again, I just want to say here that for those of you who are loved ones or exes of somebody with BPD or a narcissist for that matter, why do people feel, why do you maybe feel, or do you feel, you can let me know in the comments, that it's so important to call out their behavior as opposed to taking care of yourself and looking at what's happening to you? What is the relationship type? What kind of communication you can or cannot maintain. So many people being so hurt by so many people who either haven't been diagnosed yet with BPD but may well be at some point, people who've been diagnosed who are untreated, because it seems like even though significant number of people with BPD are in treatment, are getting help, are becoming more self-aware, and of course when all that happens, it takes time for them to be able to change behavior. They have to first find themselves to some degree, or start to understand how they're affecting others and be able to take personal responsibility and try to then, often they will not be in relationships for a time as they go through more therapy, because they realize that, they hurt and they're hurting others. But so many more people with BPD, diagnosed or maybe not yet diagnosed, they're very unaware, and they have this narrative of, their adverse childhood experience, their pain. 25% of people with BPD perceived, 75% of people with BPD actual experience, experiential adverse childhood experience. But either way, it's as real for the person with BPD, no matter what, in the 75% or the 25%. I think what's really important, for people to think about, are you pursuing this person with BPD in any relationship type? Are you trying to get them to listen to reason? Are you trying to explain what's happening for them, or what you're seeing from them, calling them out on their behavior? Are you trying to set boundaries and not getting heard? Are you going through hours and hours of, jade conversations, or so-called conversations of justify, argue, defend, and explain? Because it's going to be you on the other side of somebody with BPD who's going to be doing all the jade. Justify, argue, defending, and explaining. Because that's not what people with BPD do. They don't know, untreated, they don't know how to take any personal responsibility. They continue to be externalizing everything about their adverse childhood experience, everything about what it really is like to have BPD, what that really means, what they're experiencing when they get triggered, the pain. There are some quiet borderlines who'll be internalizing all that, but the effect on what changes relationships and often makes them not workable, when a quiet borderline withdraws, it's still, in a way, it's not exactly acting out, but it's still leaving you with the externalized consequence. Even if they're internalizing, there's an externalized consequence to where they're at, because they can't talk about it. They don't know what to say. They are going through what they're going through. So it's really hard for people, but are you pursuing, even in a relationship, with an adult child with BPD, with a family member, or a partner? Are you pursuing them? Are you trying to get them to listen? Are you trying to tell them your boundaries? Are you having these constant on and off again, or very often trying to have these, quote, conversations, unquote, that go nowhere. What's a person to do? And it depends on the relationship type, but if you haven't been with this person for long and all this is going wrong, that's a pretty big cue to walk away, to break up with the person, especially if you're just, I shouldn't say just, but in the dating phase. Why do people stay through the dating phase with chaos, drama, all kinds of things going on that are so hurtful to you? And then people stay through that thinking it'll get better, or you pursue them, you talk to them, you try to explain it to them. You want them to know what you're feeling, but they don't know what they're feeling. They're not going to get what you're feeling. They're going to defend. But you pursue them to try to explain it. And then if you're in a dating situation, often people continue on and marriage happens quickly. And the next thing you know, you have a child. Not for everybody, but all too often. And then things are way more complicated. And now there's going to be the person with BPD hurting in their own way for their own reasons from their past. And then there's going to be the partner or a husband or wife hurting with BPD. And then there's going to be a child brought into an unhealthy relationship, an unhealthy situation that's going to be wounded to one degree or another. It's so compelling, and yet the pursuit of the borderline untreated and trying to rescue, trying to get them to hear some reason, trying to get them to go to therapy, really effectively being their parent, not their partner, or not their family member or sibling, unless you are the parent, in the 25% of an adult child with BPD. But even then, that's not your responsibility or fault, because the 25% is different than the 75%. So the main message here today is, how much are you concentrating on this person? Whether you're still in a relationship or not, or you just got discarded or ghosted, or you just tried to break up and now they're hoovering, and ask yourself, really start to explore, why do you feel so compelled to pursue them when they are hurting you, when nothing is really working? What is that drive to change what is? Because you can't do that. You can only do that for yourself. You can't change anyone else. You can't, quote, wake up, unquote, anyone else. And yes, it's about a lot of pain and heartbreak. And then here's where codependency comes in for so many people. If you have codependency, and more people than not who get involved with cluster Bs do have codependency, there are patterns there. It doesn't mean it was your fault or that you knew what you were getting into, but now that you know what's going on, and especially, like I said, if you're still in a dating phase, why are you still dating this person? People take, with clients I've worked with for over 30 years now, people take 18 months to 2 years to get over these relationships, even if they were short. So the longer they are, the more involved they are. It's a lot of healing. It's a lot of grief. It's a lot of emotional and cognitive dissonance. And yes, there's that addiction factor in an unhealthy bonded situation. But with all of this, I would just say to you, it's really important to think about, why are you doing what you're doing? When this person is hurting you, and there's no mutuality, they're not able to love you, they don't attach to you, untreated people with BPD, you're loving them so much, why? There's the obvious reasons why. You're attracted, or intimate relations are fantastic. But if you can't really know a person because they don't know themselves, how are you really going to have a relationship with them that's going to be anything but chaotic and dramatic? So part of what you need to think about today, depending where you are, if you're an ex of someone with BPD, if you're a loved one, depending on the relationship type, right? What has you pursuing them? What has you so focused and feeling so compelled to save them, to rescue them, and to keep ignoring, maybe not consciously, and keep avoiding, and maybe not consciously, your pain and what's happening to you. Because people do lose themselves in these relationships to people with BPD, and especially untreated or very minimal treatment or quite not enough treatment. So think about, are you the pursuer? Because most people who are with somebody with BPD are the pursuer. They're trying to make it better. You're trying to have these, quote, conversations, unquote. They, then they will accuse you of things, and they will be projecting onto you, and then you get highly emotionally reactive to that because it hurts and it doesn't make any sense, and you're getting blamed for things that they've just done or things you certainly didn't do. And remember that rub, okay, of impossibility, which is they don't know who they are, they don't like themselves, know themselves, love themselves, so they can't accept your love. They can't accept your kindness. And in this scenario with untreated people with BPD or not enough treatment, they will, that saying, quote, no good deed goes unpunished, unquote, is so, unfortunately, right on in these situations. So with codependency, people feel compelled to make a relationship work, come hell or high water. That goes back to the patterns of whatever you experienced in your childhood when you had unmet needs or maybe more adverse experience than that, perhaps an emotionally unavailable parent. So what I want you to really think about from this video, if it applies to you, if it resonates with you, is why are you in the pursuing role? Like when the person with BPD, if they're going to ghost you all the time, off and on, give you the silent treatment, act out, rage at you, why do you pursue to try to make it right or try to fix what the issues are when A, you can't do that, and B, you're abandoning yourself to do that? So it's about thinking more about your own history, family of origin. And again, I'm out here to work with people. Family of origin issues, self-differentiation, inner child healing, but also understanding what it is you're really pursuing. Because although you might be in pursuit of the person with BPD in your life, or even an ex, or being pursued by them and then pursuing them back, it's like a dance of sort of a chase and pull away game. Only it's not a game. It's your feelings. It's your life. It could be a relationship, and children could be involved. So what I'm just here to say today is how important it is to pause and stop the pursuit. And give yourself some time for self-reflection, even if you're still in the relationship. But again, if you're an ex, and how miserably you've been treated, and how much you hurt, and how broken your heart might be, and how much you can't stop thinking about them, that's all abandoning you. And what you need to know, and I work with people to help them understand all this and heal it, but what you need to know is why you're in the pattern that you're in. Because it's not all about the person with BPD at the end of the day. It's your pattern from childhood. So obviously the person with BPD is going to recreate something for you, as well as much as being recreated for them for different reasons and at a deeper level. So it's really important to start to emotionally disengage or detach. And that might, even if you're still in a relationship, that's still helpful, because you need to detach the crazy making emotions that can lead to your reactivity, which then leads to more reactivity from the person with BPD, etc., exponentially, and can get quite dangerous. And I think in the times that we're living in right now, too, in the world that we're in the situation we're in, a lot more is leading to physical, yes, acting out physically on the part of people with BPD. And then there are some people with codependency or who are with somebody with BPD that may act out physically themselves in a very not overreactionary way, just a really strong reactionary way. It happens because you're over your limits and you're over your boundaries. So it's time to look more at your limits and your boundaries instead of pursuing the person with BPD. And what do I mean by pursue? Well, always be texting them back. Always be trying to get the conversation going. Always be trying to get them to talk about what you really do need them to realize or talk about. But rather than being in that active pursuit so often, or in pursuit of an ex, or hoovering, or reverse hoovering, or any of that, it's really about, and it's hard, it's difficult, it's so painful, but it's about taking your own inventory and looking at yourself and stopping the pursuit and realizing just how maybe you're not prepared, maybe you don't know how to cope with loss and grief, because maybe you have a stockpile of that from your childhood. But staying in relationships to untreated people with BPD, whatever the relationship type, it's Stockholm Syndrome. So that doesn't just happen with narcissists. It's when you're now identifying with and loving someone who's actively treating you terribly, and they can't stop it. And you're not going to be able to make them stop it or pursue them enough in conversation, in communication, in trying to drag them to therapy. So are you pursuing today? Are you in a pursuing place, no matter the relationship type or what's going on? Because if you are, what you need to really think more about, look at, and maybe get some help for, is why are you doing that pursuing? Because it's a little bit like smashing your head against a wall. Only maybe you don't see that yet. Maybe you don't see how futile it really is, because it's very painful to realize that, and to stop the pursuing, and stop the re-engagement, and stop the, jade circular, quote, conversations, unquote, and stop trying to rescue them. You have an inner child in you that needs rescue. You have something you need to grieve or work through from your own childhood. You have agency over that. You can make lots of choices with that. But you can't rescue, save, fix, or change a person with BPD, especially untreated, who's not interested in getting treated. Don't let all the peripherals around that are good, the physical intimacy, etc. Don't let I shouldn't say peripheral, but I think I'm just saying it that way for a reason. Because what's at the heart of any relationship that's going to be healthy, that isn't going to continue to hurt you, and you're going to be self-abandoning yourself and losing yourself, well, there should be mutuality there. There shouldn't be one person chasing the other. Or sometimes the person with BPD will get in a position, if you're starting to pull back, where they might start chasing you again, whether you're still in a relationship or your exes. But this pursuit is really something to look at, because you are pursuing the person with BPD in your life the way that you pursued a parent in your childhood. And it was very different when you were a child, pursuing a parent to get your needs met, and for all the reasons that happens to people in their childhoods. But pursuing somebody who's at least aged and intellectually an adult, but emotionally arrested emotional development, emotionally they're sort of like young children, I respectfully say to you, it's futile. And if you think you're in pain now, and I'm sure you're in a lot of pain now, you're going to exponentially increase your pain until it becomes unbearable, and until you don't know what to do with it. If you keep this pursuit up, of rescue, of trying to get them to therapy, of recontact, of anything to do with what is actually futile. Need to come to realize that, because they do not attach to you. They do not love you. And it's incredibly difficult, but it's so important. And I think even more so in this day and age in which we live, with uncertainty and not knowing what's going on in the world. Just want to say, it's a very different situation, but what happened in Nova Scotia yesterday in Canada, Canada's worst ever mass situation of that kind of event, is horrific. But in smaller ways, that's what people are risking more and more right now. If you're in self-isolation with somebody with BPD untreated, And they're not all the same, but many of them can be quite dangerous. So the message really here is, are you pursuing them, whether you're an ex or still in a relationship to them? Why are you doing that? What does that mean for you? And just know that all the time you're pursuing them in one way or another and thinking about them or having obsessive thoughts, you're abandoning yourself. So you can't hope for any diminishment in your pain and the chaos and the drama of it all unless you get some help to stop the pursuit and maybe end the relationship. And if you're an ex, you definitely need to stop re-pursuing what you already pursued that didn't work out. And why is this so compelling for so many people? Because they have unfinished business from childhood, and you have stuck grief, and you don't know how to let go, and you don't know how to deal with any more pain. So please stop the pursuit of the person with BPD that you can't help, you can't rescue, you can't fix, you can't change, you can't make a relationship work with. You can't go back if you're the ex, you can't try again, you can't start over. You need to be working on yourself. You need to heal the person you can heal, and that's yourself. Take care.